He was supposed to be untouchable, a generational talent, the kind of fighter the sport produces once in a decade. And for a long time, the numbers back that up. An unblemished record, devastating finishes, and a confidence that seemed almost supernatural inside the octagon. Then Justin Gaethje opened his mouth, and everything changed. Not because of a fight, not because of a loss, but because of words. And in the world of mixed martial arts, sometimes words hit harder than any punch. Rewind just a few years, and the narrative around Ilia Topuria was practically written in stone. Here was a fighter from Alicante, Spain, Georgian by blood, ferocious by nature, dismantling opponents with a controlled, calculated violence that felt almost artistic. Every performance added another layer to the legend. Every finish silenced another group of doubters. He wasn't just climbing the ranks of the UFC. He was doing it in a way that made you believe the ceiling didn't exist for him.
Fans weren't just watching a rising star. They were watching what they thought was the future of the sport itself. But here is what the highlight reels don't always show you. Behind every champion is a growing army of analysts, coaches, and competitors studying every frame of footage, every habit, every pattern, every microsecond of hesitation. The moment a fighter reaches the top, they stop hunting and start being hunted. That invisible shift is where careers quietly begin to fracture long before anyone notices the cracks. Justin Gaethje has lived inside that pressure. He has stepped into the octagon against some of the most dangerous men alive and walked out, sometimes victorious, sometimes not, but always scarred by the unforgiving truth of elite competition. That truth is simple. No one stays untouchable forever. When Gaethje publicly questioned the narrative surrounding Topuria, he wasn't speaking from envy or rivalry. He was speaking from experience that cannot be faked. And the MMA world heard every single word. Within hours, the debate tore across social media like wildfire. Supporters of Topuria pushed back hard, pointing to his skill set, his finishing instincts, his unshakable self-belief under pressure. They argued that dismissing him now, before any concrete evidence of decline, was not analysis. It was impatience dressed up as wisdom. They had a point. But the other side of that argument carries real weight too. This sport has a habit of humbling its favorites without warning. Fighters once considered invincible have suddenly looked ordinary. Champions who seemed destined to reign for years have been dethroned in a single evening. And the dangerous pattern is always the same. The higher the expectations, the less room there is for the slightest imperfection. Topuria has been placed on a pedestal built partly from highlight reels and partly from projection. At some point, the pedestal meets reality. What makes this conversation genuinely compelling isn't just the names involved. It's the deeper question underneath it all. A question every combat sports fan eventually has to wrestle with. Are we watching a fighter in the middle of his dominance? Or are we watching the beginning of the end of a particular version of him before the sport has fully figured out how to expose it? Gaethje's skepticism, whether calculated or casual, forced that question into the open. And once a question like that exists publicly, it doesn't disappear. It grows. It follows a fighter into every press conference, every training camp, every walkout. The mental burden of silence and collective doubt is its own kind of opponent, one that never gasses out and never takes a round off. History offers us a guide here. The sport is full of fighters who were buried too soon by premature criticism, who returned with performances that made their doubters look foolish. It is equally full of fighters who were celebrated too loudly for too long, until the weight of impossible expectations finally became too much to carry. Predicting which category a fighter belongs in before the defining moments arrive is an exercise in educated guesswork at best. That is the brutal, brilliant chaos of this sport. No analyst, no veteran, no algorithm can tell you with certainty what happens when the cage door closes and two elite competitors collide. The only real answer ever delivered in combat sports is delivered through action, inside the octagon, under the lights, with everything on the line. For Ilia Topuria, that is where this story will ultimately be resolved. Not in comment sections, not in press junkets, not in the opinions of veterans, however credible. The cage is the only courtroom that matters, and performance is the only verdict that sticks. The next time he walks to that octagon, every eye in the sport will be watching differently, not just for a finish, but for signs, for signals, for the truth that only competition can reveal about a fighter's real ceiling. Justin Gaethje lit the match. The question of Ilia Topuria's future is now burning. And sooner or later, only one thing will put it out. What happens next will define not just a career, but a legacy.